how do we actually know that markets are getting less elastic over time? And maybe to ask it a slightly different way, how do we know that index funds have less elastic demand than whoever the counterfactual security holder was in the absence of index funds?
Well, so part of it is actually answered in your own question, right? So you just asked me about the dynamics of what's the difference between discretionary index trackers and systematic index trackers, right? By definition, somebody is less elastic if they can't change their rules,
Hmm.
right? So we actually know that to be the case. Now, the academic community has done a tremendous amount of work on this. You're familiar with the work of Valentin Haddad, for example. How competitive is the stock market? We've talked through these dynamics before. And they are identifying that the market itself has become increasingly inelastic. Now, I could share with you a couple of slides, some of which are actually quite dated. And one of the interesting things about the presentation that I shared with you is very few of these slides have actually changed in any meaningful way over the years. But one of the slides I just draw your attention to is slide 14, which shows you the market's reaction to fundamental events. So on earnings reports, we're seeing a significantly greater level of price change associated with earnings reports. I have kept this chart in part because I love the description on it, that it's showing against an average. Something that's clearly trending is being shown against an average, as if it's going to somehow mean revert in the future. I don't think that's the case, obviously. I think that it's becoming less elastic. And again, I would encourage people to check out the work of Valentin Haddad, which is on slide 15, talking about these underlying dynamics of market capitalization relative to elasticity. Their tests show that the largest companies, those that make up the top of the S&P 500 or the NASDAQ 100, paradoxically are the least elastic, right? And as they become larger and larger and the index becomes concentrated amongst those names, the indices themselves, the markets themselves are becoming significantly less elastic.
Yep. Yeah, I think I can't remember if it's from their paper or from talking with you, but the intuitive explanation of that is basically that anyone who cares about tracking relative to an index has to hold those largest stocks, so they're going to be less elastic.
Correct. But I mean, that is the easiest way to think about it, right? Is if I buy the S&P 500, theoretically, I could statistically sample and say, I don't really need Delta Airlines. It's not a very big company. It's not going to have a meaningful impact on the index, but I have to own Microsoft. I have to own Apple. I have to own NVIDIA.